There we go. Welcome to the Releasing Community channel on YouTube. And briefly, I'm here with Katya, and we're launching a podcast, which is featuring some of our friends and fellow facilitators of the Sedona Method. So in addition to that, we have also been running the Friday support call, which features some of the same people providing support to others using the Sedona Method. How's that for an introduction, Katya? Would you like to take the ball and run?
Thank you. I will. Yes. So, welcome for me too. On my behalf, if I'm speaking for the Releasing Community podcast, and that podcast is a place where we share our love for releasing and the Sedona Method. And we share there all our benefits, our insights, and our experiences of using that method. And this is the introductory session, so we'll be talking a little bit more about the podcast, how it works, and what's inside it. But just before we go any further, would Stephen, you explain if there are people who are totally new to the Sedona Method and know nothing about it? What is the method?
Of course, yes. Yeah, so the Sedona Method is a simple toolkit, if you will, to explore and let go of limiting thoughts, beliefs, and feelings. How's that for a simple explanation? I always think of it as a toolkit because there are various different ways that we can approach these issues. And so, yeah, we're part of a wider community of people who are practicing, sometimes just releasing on their own, listening to recordings, but many of us also go on to learn the art of facilitating others using the Sedona Method. And so, yeah, one thing that I always like, I love the way that you introduce each podcast, Katya, by saying that this is really about our love of the method, because truly that's what we're all about here, is practicing the method, helping others to understand it, and offering support. And that's my chance to pass the ball on to you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the kind of the idea for the podcast actually came from that love and sharing the method, as I kind of realized that whenever two releasers meet, whether it's in person on retreats or courses or like this online, there are certain questions that everybody is interested in, like, how did you start? How did you find this? How long have you been releasing? What have been your biggest gains? What has changed in your life? How do you practice it? And then the conversation flows to kind of everyone's favorite ways of releasing, whether they used it in their job or professionally, or if they have releasing partners or all that kind of thing. And I also noticed that often when I'm been releasing with my releasing partners, the conversations about releasing have been just as beneficial and brilliant as the releases themselves. And that just usually is very little room or time for that kind of conversation, especially on the online environment. When we are having a support call or facilitator practice call, there isn't time for that, even though it is interesting. So I thought that why don't we actually start having those conversations and record them, so we would get to know each other and spread that, not just the information how individual people do it, but kind of like you get hints and you get inspired by hearing how beneficial it has been, what gains people have got. And since we have already recorded a few, and I definitely must say that they have been really beautiful and amazing to watch and listen and participate in. So And we are here with Stephen because I spoke about this idea. Stephen got interested in it, and then we developed it a bit further, and here we are. So,
Well, and you also stepped up as the first host of the Friday support call. So that's also a synchronicity, perhaps. And
yeah, it was the way that was easiest for me because I knew I didn't have to compare myself to anyone else.
so I have to say also, I really enjoy the way that you lead the podcast and ask the questions and delve into the stories, the experiences, the games, and all of these things. And so, just for now, I'm going to turn the tables on you and ask you some of those questions. How did you get started with the method, Katya?
That was in 2013.
Yeah,
10 years ago, I was doing EFT, emotional freedom technique at the time.
tapping. Yes,
And yes, tapping. And I was very pleased with that technique. But I belonged to a group and they were introducing Hale Twoskin, the figurehead of Sedona Method. And it was like a 20-minute interview and I was impressed. I ordered the book right away. I was happy with the book. Then I thought it's easier if I kind of could listen and do the releasing instead of reading and trying to release while I went. I got the super course, kind of the basic course that's recommended. That's an audio course. And then I actually thought that I have enough material and courses for the rest of my life that I'll never have to participate a course ever again. Luckily, I was wrong, and I attended my first live retreat, or first retreat whatsoever, in 2015. I got my first releasing partners then, and really, it's been just wonderful how it's compared to every other technique I've ever used or modality. This never gets old, never gets boring, never kind of stops working. It just opens up and it gets deeper and deeper. So I'm a happy camper with this method.
well, not only are you a happy camper, but you've really gone to the next level by learning how to facilitate others by, well, doing this professionally as well. And also, do I understand you were part of, well, you wrote your book in the Finnish language about releasing. Can you tell us a little bit more? Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of funny because I remember speaking to one practitioner of the method about that I'm an author and that I've been doing releasing Sedona Method for some years, and he was like, "Oh, that's perfect. You could write a book about the Sedona Method in Finnish." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. I'm not experienced enough. Maybe someday." And actually, a year later, I had a publishing deal, and it was something actually I suggested my publishing house that I translate the Sedona Method book or the Happiness is Free by Lester Levinson and Hale Twoskin. And instead they got excited, but they said that, well, these are really looking really great, but how would you like to write directly into Finnish, kind of a Finnish to the Finnish reader? Well, obviously I liked it. It was like a dream come true. And I think that was kind of a deep dive into the method as well, because I really had to be sure what's the core, what's at the core of each question series, what's at the core, how to present things so that someone who knows absolutely nothing can follow and do it by themselves. So it was living and breathing the Sedona Method for a year.
Oh, of course. And when did you release
Yeah.
the book?
The book came out in January 23 this year. Yes. And I've been doing workshops and lectures, presentations about that in Finnish here too. And it kind of gives the kind of interesting cross reference when I'm doing it. I've learned the method in English, then I'm using it in Finnish, in my native tongue, and it kind of feels different. They kind of complement each other, and it's kind of interesting process to notice when I'm using Finnish, when I'm releasing by myself, and when I'm using English. There seems to be some patterns.
And that definitely comes up as a theme in the podcast. We also spoke, for example, with Ingrid about doing
Yes.
German language, status, of course, in Greek. And yeah, the method, you do need to adopt it somehow to the local vocabulary. And there are certain things that don't necessarily translate directly into the local language.
Yes,
like,
they don't.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes,
Yeah, exactly.
that is.
But I wanted to ask you, do you work with international clients at all, or are you available for that? Working
I'm sorry?
remotely for English? Do you work in the English language with international clients as well?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay, then.
I'm doing free support calls twice a month at the moment, and I'm also taking clients in English as well as in Finnish. So both languages go. And my website is down below here, and there's no the in the beginning. It's just joyofreleasing.com, where you can find me.
Wonderful. And since you mentioned that, yes, we'll put your link down there in the description, but also we run a support call calendar, and I'm going to provide the link as well, because your call, as well as many other support calls, are available there, and they're all for free. Yeah.
Yes, that is one of the wonderful features of this method. It's so well, we speak more about it in the podcasts, but how people are ready to share it, and how it's so usable, absolutely usable and beautiful. But Stephen, how did you find releasing the method? You were in Hungary at the time, were you?
I lived in Budapest, Hungary for most of my adult life, yeah. And I was 2003. Yeah, briefly, I was really, this was like a life crisis that was happening. I had been an entrepreneur, and then in the digital world, but there was a big crash that happened in 2001. Which ended a business, ended a relationship, and just left me in a bit of a mess. I mean, emotionally, and a friend offered me. I found, a big writing project, which was a lot of money, wonderful, etc. But I found myself struggling. I was completely. I had writer's block. I couldn't face any of the work. And I ordered DVDs online, sort of out of desperation. I think I paid $300. They shipped them to Budapest. And as soon as I received the DVDs, I spent maybe a solid month releasing. And I actually got the work done a little bit late, but still. And I've been releasing ever since. But so that was 20 years ago. But then really it was the pandemic. Or I think actually I learned to facilitate the method in 2019. But then the pandemic hit in 2020, and I kind of plugged into our WhatsApp community and started offering my services remotely to others on calls. We have an on-call releasing channel, but we also do facilitation practice calls, which you and I have taken part in as well. So I just found that, with the pandemic, all of a sudden everybody had more time. All of a sudden everything was virtual, right? And it felt like the entire world was hurting. It was just this, the human animal was just in the psychic pain. You could feel it collectively. And So I know that I'm not the only person that had this experience. A lot of us just kind of threw ourselves into supporting others online, facilitating and so forth. So yeah, that's the last 3 years have been quite intense in terms of my own develop and deepening my practice, um, offering my services to clients, and working to, well, build and support this online community, which we're calling the releasing community. Because we're all fans and practitioners of the Sedona Method, and
Yes.
working to support each other and, well, humanity.
Well,
So
broadly speaking, yes. Yes.
broadly speaking, yeah. Well, also narrowly, because in a certain sense, there is no such thing as the separate
Um,
self. And
yes. Yes.
yeah, which is also part of what we experience at the heart of awareness.
Yes. You're very active in the community, organizing things and kind of offering others place to practice or do the support calls. But what if somebody wants to work directly with you? Where do they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. I have we'll put the link down below in the description as well too. I've got, at this point, I'm offering an online course called Working from the Heart.
Mm.
And that's a whole story. Basically, my orientation is the path of the heart.
Mm.
And using the Sedona Method.
Mm.
That's really the simplest explanation. And I also do work with people one-on-one, and I'm looking to expand this beyond as well. I think that ultimately I'd like to have group workshops. I'm just not there yet. So, but who knows, by the time people listen to this, that may be available below
Who
as well.
knows? Yes.
And
Who
that's also
knows?
the wonderful thing, just to say, is that we started this call with just a basic understanding of where we were headed, but not really too much planning. And here we are.
Yes. Yes. And I really love the kind of conversations we've had, and I have full trust they will be continue the same way, in the sense that even though everyone has their unique perspective, down in the core we are all speaking of the same thing, and there is the love and caring and deep respect for the method, and how there is love at the core of it. Even though I remember I didn't used to like the word love. I thought it was a kind of a, kind of romantic comedy thing.
It's so loaded with all kinds of
Yes,
meanings and expectations and
yes,
misunderstandings.
yeah, and there's so much kind of talk about love that doesn't sound true. Part of it may be that I come from Finland, and we aren't used to loving everything in Finnish. It's much easier to love in English. I've noticed that myself too. But kind of like, it took me some years to really feel it and kind of notice it. And now it's much more open. The love that is there all the time, here, that is love that is. So yeah, it definitely is beautiful to see kind of different shapes and forms of it, and kind of how it's being experienced and shown, and how it's shining through in each and every
Exactly.
one. Yeah.
And I can't think of a better way to introduce this channel, this community, the releasing community, and this podcast.
Yes. We'll be releasing 2 episodes a month. That is the plan at the moment, which we may change or we may not change. And for now, we are recording these conversations with these other experienced facilitators, but that also might change or not. But we are really happy to share this with you, and we hope to see and meet you along the way.
Okay, then. I think we said what we wanted to say. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, in that case, the end.